Hello, everyone. Amanda Williams, MD, MPH, here with you, and I want to talk a little bit about maintaining healthy blood glucose. This is a major issue that we know spans across the country and obviously across the world. But when we look at statistics and we look at things such as metabolic syndrome or prediabetes, we know that this is incredibly prevalent. It's estimated a good 80 million Americans fall into the category of being pre-diabetic. And so that's not necessarily a category that you want to be in, especially if you are not being proactive in terms of really addressing that issue. And there are so many people that have gone into their doctor's office maybe for just an annual checkup, and maybe you get a call back from your doctor and they say, you got to really watch what you're eating, cut back on the sugars, but many times people think, well, all right, well, maybe I'll make a few different modifications, but you're probably not doing the right things. And we see this time and time again. And if it's not controlled, then we progress into that next stage, which can lead into type 2 diabetes. And certainly we know that with that comes a whole slew of systemic breakdown from cardiovascular implications, kidney implications, eye issues, brain health issues. So clearly, we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So, what can we be doing? Well, first and foremost, we always want to think about the foods. I know I always default back to this, but I am a huge stickler when it comes to let food be thy medicine. And there is so much to this. We know that when it comes to fiber intake, and fiber is very important in our diet because this helps to slow the rate at which our blood glucose elevates. So every time we eat, the way that the pancreas functions is we are going to get an elevation in blood glucose. And then that is offset with the release of the hormone insulin. Now, when someone becomes insulin resistant over time, meaning that there's a delayed response in which that insulin is being released, what that actually means to you is that your blood glucose is staying elevated for too long, which can be a major issue because now we know we're looking at problems such as glycation. Never a good thing. So, fiber, fiber, fiber. What do we know about a standard American diet? Well, it pretty much is negligent when it comes to fiber. Where do we source fiber from? And it's not just from, say, a slice of bread. I remember many years ago, I was working in a position in which I had a lot of direct communication with a GI specialist. And one of his areas that he would talk to people about in terms of incorporating more fiber was that they should have romaine lettuce instead of iceberg, and then maybe have whole wheat bread instead of white. Which to me, knowing what I know about nutrition, it always kind of made me chuckle. And I would always hope that those people would then find their way into my office so I could really explain to them the importance of fiber and how you can actually obtain that. So, what we know is that most Americans, on average, get about 5 to 10 grams of fiber per day. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, what does that really mean? How much fiber am I supposed to have? Well, I'm going to tell you. We are supposed to be getting 30 grams of fiber every day. And I just said most Americans are getting 5 to 10. So, where do we get fiber from? Well, it makes a whole lot of sense when we think about a standard American diet, which is extremely lacking in fiber. So, fiber in foods naturally is coming from things like fruits and vegetables. Okay, so let's take a pause here and think, well, how do Americans do with intake of fruits and vegetables? Okay, well, we know from the National Nutritional data that they did that on average, about 75% of Americans do not get adequate fruit intake per day. And it's even higher, about 85% of Americans are not getting adequate vegetable intake. So when we say adequate, what are we talking about? When we talk about fruits, we're talking at least 1 cup of fruit per day. We're talking vegetables, we're talking 2 cups per day. So the average American can't even achieve that, which is why is one explanation as to why we're lacking fiber. But other places that we can source fiber from include things like seeds and nuts. Well, we know that the average American would prefer to have their bag of potato chips as opposed to snacking on something like almonds or walnuts. So these are all things that we know. So we can see how a standard American diet is so incredibly deficient in fiber. So, how do we correct this? Well, if you adhere to a Mediterranean diet, then it will be very easy to get to that goal of that 30 grams per day. If we incorporate fruits and vegetables into our diet each and every single day, if we replace things like potato chips and Doritos and things like that, and we put in seeds and nuts, pumpkin seeds, walnuts, all of these ways that we can increase our natural fiber intake coming from foods. It's so incredibly beneficial. So, as I said, the fiber helps to slow down the rate at which glucose goes up. So, this is why we want to have these foods in our diet. But we can also look at other things that we can be doing. We can look at the utilization of basic trace minerals, things such as chromium and vanadium, which we know a standard American diet, once again, is significantly lacking in. And we know that both chromium and vanadium play a really critical role in enhancing insulin sensitivity. So, allowing the pancreas to do what it needs to do to make sure that it responds to that spike in glucose. So, this is important. But we can also look at magnesium. This is a huge one. Magnesium is like that wonder mineral. It is utilized for over 300 different functions in the body. And if we know that a good 50% of Americans are lacking in magnesium, well, then this can certainly create an issue. We know that magnesium is needed for that insulin response. So if we don't have enough magnesium, we're going to have a delayed response once again. So you can kind of see this pattern, how this happens throughout the course of a typical American's life. Okay, the food's not high in fiber, and we're not getting adequate trace minerals. We're lacking magnesium. And so by the time we hit fourth, fifth decade of life, we start to get these issues. And so maybe the doctor says, your blood sugar's a little high. Maybe they say, you what? You fall into the category of metabolic syndrome, which would include elevations in blood sugar. It includes elevations in triglycerides and increased waist circumference. So these are the early detection signs that say, hey, we need to do, a complete 180 on this, and we need to make sure that we are making corrections in our diet, and we also make sure that we're incorporating just these basic nutrients. Now, if you go to our website, you will look under the blood sugar support line of supplements that we offer. We have GlucoHX, for example, which has a combination of that chromium, vanadium. It also has alpha lipoic acid, which is a very important endogenous amino acid that, once again, helps with that insulin sensitivity, but it also does something else. It's very targeted towards that glycation that we know does significant damage throughout the body. It has bitter melon extract, it has nopal cactus. So, all of these different herbs and powerful trace minerals to help to support the way that our body reacts to those spikes or shifts in blood glucose. I always say you don't want your blood sugar to be like a crazy roller coaster ride throughout your day. You don't want to be going up and then coming crashing back down and then going back up and down. We want to try and have it like a nice, smooth, steady road. And we can achieve this with a little help with number one, our diet and those high fiber foods. But we can also help ourselves along by incorporating things such as the glucoHX or taking magnesium every day, adding in, 200 micrograms of chromium, for example, before you have a meal. These are things that can make a big difference. And the way that you can tell is if you make these dietary changes and you start to incorporate things like magnesium and chromium into your daily supplementation routine. You go back into your doctor, you say, hey, go ahead and let's look at my blood sugar, but not just that quick snapshot, not just the fasting glucose. Let's actually look at the long term glucose. Let's look at hemoglobin A1C. And what that's actually detecting is the rate of glycation. We know that that's that harmful stuff that actually occurs, the advanced glycation end products. So we want to look at that rate of glycation that is occurring on our hemoglobin. So we think about the lifespan of a red blood cell, 120 days. So when we look at hemoglobin A1C, that's what we're actually seeing. We're seeing how much sugar is actually hooked on to the hemoglobin over the course of that red blood cell's life. And if we see that that level is high, then we know, this is an issue. That means we're having a delayed insulin response. It means we probably don't have enough fiber in our diet. It means we're probably lacking these very important minerals, and we can make those adjustments. And when you do, and you go back in and you redo that hemoglobin A1C level, and you see it's starting to come back into a better range, you will say, ah, yes, being proactive is definitely a good choice for my overall health. So there's many different things that you can do. I always say, first and foremost, change the things that you know are simple to change, which is your diet. It just making simple changes can make such an incredible difference, not just to your blood sugar, but when we also look at the way cholesterol is processed in the body. Everything in totality really functions so much better when our body and our little tiny cells have the ability to function the way that they need to, but they require these vitamins and minerals and antioxidants in order to do that. So keep that in mind. Go to our website, invitehealth.com. Check out the blood sugar support products. The GlucoHX is a really good option. We have the C-Benic, which has cinnamon extract. Everyone's probably heard of all the benefits of cinnamon extract, and certainly it is. Once again, it's working on helping to enhance insulin sensitivity. So we don't want to have insulin resistance. We don't want that insulin to be lazy and say, I don't feel like helping out right now. That's fine if the blood sugar's high. We want our insulin to be responsive. So keep that in mind. Magnesium, definitely also a very, very beneficial thing throughout the entire body. So magnesium is always key and crucial to your supplementation routine. And I will be back with you in a few more days to talk about more wonderful formulations that are available at Invite Health. Thank you.